Hey, everybody, it's Tony George and Griffin Murphy. In the immortal words of David Lee Roth, heard you missed us. We're back. That's right. Doc's Gridiron six pack, and of course, Griffin right there in the background, about, I don't know, 700 yards from Allegiant Stadium, right there on the Las Vegas Strip, as the Super Bowl, my beloved Kansas City Chiefs, are back in town in a very familiar arena they play in once a year when they play the Raiders, taking on the San Francisco 49ers. And it's kind of, Griff, just from a layman's term standpoint, I know you've been out and about downtown doing some shows. I'll be doing one tonight
Yep.
with Gabe Morrissey at Sports Rage on Sports Grid TV and all that. I know you did that the other night. It seems to be a very partisan San Francisco crowd in town right now.
Absolutely. And I was actually caught by surprise. And Tony, I kind of look at it. There's a lot of haters. A lot of people I think are tired of the fact that the Chiefs are back in the Super Bowl again. And that's kind of more so. And of course, you got a lot of people coming in from California. So that's kind of another thing. There's definitely a lot more Niners fans here than Chiefs fans, most definitely.
Yeah, they were kind of getting a lot of boos the other night when you watch kind of the media night there live on NFL Network. Of course, Mrs. George was glued to the television set. She was all pissed off that they were booing her Mahomie and they were booing Kelsey and the rest of them. But hey, the fans don't play the game; the players do. And
Amen.
we got us a good ball game. Currently, the line as of Wednesday here is San Francisco -2, total 47.5. First half line is San Francisco -0.5, and the first half total is 23. And it should be noted that the second half total right now I'm going to do some in-game wagering on this during the game.
Mhm.
But the second half total is currently over and under 23.5. And bear in mind that Kansas City is 18-2 against the spread this year to the under in the second half. That's something to keep an eye on if you don't have enough cojones up front to bet the second half under. Well, you can find that almost anywhere. You definitely want to take a look at that at halftime. See how this game unfolds. And of course, Griffin, folks, I got to be honest with you. The real money is made in the prop market in this game. That's what we're going to really concentrate on. We'll have two separate cards over at Doc's, both Griff and I. And
Yep.
what we're doing for the Super Bowl over at DocSports.com, and of course, you can go get a free $60 account. If you've never been a member, you can see the link up there, also upper left-hand tab corner of the website. And that means you get all weekend for free in football because cards are $25. For prop cards, $25. Their prop cards are $25 every day. And of course, the Super Bowl sides, whatever people are putting on their side and total card, same game teaser, whatever, those are $25 as well, both in the football section and the prop section there. But I guess, Griff, initially out of the gate, I thought, and I brought this name up and this scenario up many times. My old mentor in the business, Mike Lee, told me a long time ago, just take the best team and bet them, regardless of the spread. And at least opening thoughts, I think the total's sharp.
Sure.
It can go one way or the other with that total. I think it has a tendency to go one way more than the other way, which is going to be part of my card. So I'm really going to bite my tongue. But out of the gate, I thought the better team was getting points. In
Yeah.
Kansas City, if you take a look at the pedigree, 8 division titles, 6 straight AFC championship games, 4 Super Bowls in 5 years, 4 AFC championship rings, the best quarterback in football, the best tight end in football, arguably the best coach in football, the best defense in the game. There sure is a lot of signals, and this is I'm looking at numbers and I'm dealing with facts. I'm not considering the fact I've been a Kansas City Chief fan for 50 plus years, growing up in Lincoln, Nebraska, and then living in Kansas City. And moving back to Kansas City, as a matter of fact, part-time, going to be splitting time between Kansas City and Vegas. Going to have the best of both worlds. But out of the gate, Griff, that's the initial thing that jumps in my mind when I look at this game. Obviously, there's insinuating circumstances and arguments to be made on both sides of the ball, and San Francisco, obviously not without some merit here. A lot of merit, actually, Griff.
Yeah, Tony, this for me, myself, breaking this game down, this is a pick'em game in my eyes. I agree with you. I think the better team is getting points in this matchup, but there's so many if factors going into this game. You kind of can already look at this 49ers team and know where they're kind of going to go about this game. You've got Kittle, you've got Debo, you've got McCaffrey, you've got Ayuk, you've got all these power horse players on the offensive side of the field. And then you kind of know what to expect. If Purdy's going to throw the ball downfield, well, he's going to go to Ayuk. His check mark guy is going to be Kittle. You kind of already know all of these factors. But when you look at the Chiefs, their biggest flaw right now is at the wide receiver position. So in my eyes, looking at this game, it's a really interesting game because how do you go about it as Andy Reid, and how does Kyle Shanahan approach this game on a defensive perspective? Because you know what Mahomes can do to you. And not to get statistical, but in his postseason career, he's got 39 touchdowns, 7 picks. He's passed for over 4,800 yards. He's 10-1-1 as an underdog. I mean, he's done it all. So the if factor for me is going to be Isaiah Pacheco. That is going to establish for me. I think the smartest take going into this game for Kansas City with Andy Reid is getting the ball first. I think that would be their best bet. And the reason being is because if they can establish that run game with Isaiah Pacheco, that's going to open up the pass game for Patrick Mahomes to start finding his guys like Tony, like Ross, Ross, who was a sleeper. He's the X factor who I am keeping in mind by all means. And of course, your guy Rice, who absolutely breaks out. I mean, he's having an outstanding season. So there's a lot of if factors in this game for me, Tony. We've kind of already know where the Niners going to go with this thing, but how do the Chiefs approach the quote unquote number one best defense in all of football? So that's where I'm kind of with this one right now, Tony.
Yeah, and the weakness in Kansas City, it's hard to believe you spend $500 million on a 10-year contract for a quarterback and not give him any wide receivers. Right. I mean, I just don't. I don't get it. That's a flaw within the organization. I think they'll address in the draft and probably in free agency in the off season, which is scary because of Mahomes' ability. But having Pacheco and that run game and Edwards-Helaire, which bear in mind was a first-round draft pick, although Pacheco's taken center stage as a fifth-round draft pick, Andy Reid just knows how to find talent. But, if they can, with Pacheco, they can offset that weakness at wide receiver. We don't have a weakness at tight end, obviously, and receivers have stepped up in the postseason. You're talking about a team that beat the number 2 and the number 1 seed on the road, the Baltimore game convincingly, and then shut down the number 1 offense in the NFL in Miami to 7 points. There's got to be an asterisk beside that because a South Miami team was playing in 25-degree below zero weather. Yeah. Which was a huge advantage for Kansas City. That's why that was my playoff game of the year, because of that. Just that alone, it's just a reality you got to deal with. But I'm still hawing around on the side play here. It's a concern for San Francisco that they were just absolutely gashed on the ground by both Green Bay and Detroit. I mean, Detroit did whatever they wanted to do. And I'll say this and get your comment back. I would say that if anybody else but Dan Campbell was coaching the Lions in that game, we'd be talking about Lions and Chiefs and not 49ers, Griff.
Yeah, I agree with you, and I disagree in a sense of it's kind of weird for me. Dan Campbell is getting a lot of hatred right now for going for it on fourth down. And that is something that he did season in or all season, game in, game out. So for me with Campbell on that spectrum, I like the way he coached that game. I do, because he didn't change the way he coached all season long. So that was something. He stuck to what he does.
No.
He stuck to what he knows. And I like that and I respect that. He's an aggressive guy and he did that. They just fell short. They ended up choking in the fourth, or they choked in the entire second half, and they had that game won. But going back to this specific game in particular, my biggest thing right now, Tony, looking at the Niners, is the way that their defense is declining. 5 of their last 6 games on the defensive side, they've allowed at least 20 points. So, and they gave up 31 points against the Lions. I think it was 24 points against the Packers. The Rams were in there. They lost to the Rams. So there's a lot of defensive factors that the Niners are now dealing with. And now you've got to deal with an absolute gunslinger with Patrick Mahomes in this game. So there's so many if factors that are circling around this game right now, Tony. So that's kind of where I'm hanging around with this. My biggest key out, though, is the way that this defense for the Niners is declining and the way that the defense for the Chiefs has been inclining, uptrending to the upside.
Yeah, there's always it's always, Patrick Mahomes, Travis Kelce. I know the entire universe is sick of seeing them on TV, seeing them on every commercial. Taylor Swift, Andy Reid now jumping in these commercials, and that's what everybody talks about. But what people that have a brain in their head that aren't listening to mainstream media, because that's where all the focus is at. The real story with Kansas City has been their defense. That's what people are missing out on. This is the best defense Patrick Mahomes has ever had. He's won Super Bowls without this good a defense. I can tell you that much.
Yep.
So the story of Kansas City is the defense and Spagnuolo and him, dealing up a lot of blitz packages, which caused Purdy a lot of problems. McCaffrey can burn you if you're blitzing and you somehow get the ball to him out in the flat. He can break one for 30, 35 yards. I don't know what his longest reception prop is off the top of my head, but you might want to take a look at that. But speaking of props, and the other thing too, I'll say, allow me to retort. When you're talking about Dan Campbell, I expected nothing less out of Dan Campbell than what I got. He like you said, he stayed true to his script. He's got big balls. He's a risk taker. He believes in his team. I thought, trying to run the ball with 3 timeouts left, that was a bad coaching decision. They had to burn a timeout down there, which cost them at the end of the game. And sometimes you do got to throttle back. You got to take out the iron and lay up on the par 5 instead of taking out that 3-wood like you always do and try and carry water at 220, 230 yards. Sometimes
like
when you want to win the U.S. Open, or you want to win the Masters or the British Open, or the Tour Players Championship. Sometimes you don't want to Tiger Woods it. You gotta do the smart thing, So I thought if it came up in that game, potentially he might do it a different way than he'd done it all year, but he didn't, and he stayed with it. And by the way, the Lions had a hell of a year, and they're not going anywhere, folks. That's a good football team with a lot of good players on it. They learned a lot and now Ben Johnson's staying as OC. They didn't lose him to a head coaching job, which is really crucial for them. Let's get to some prop plays here, and I'm going to give you a couple. Griffin and I are going to go back and forth. I'm going to throw out a couple. I don't know what Griff's giving out. These might even overlap on each other, but we've been talking about the quarterbacks in this game, and one I really like here. This actually may be part of my 10-play card. I'm still putting it together, but this is a bet that I've already wagered here at Circa in town. Brock Purdy under 1.5 touchdown passes. It's been 2 months since Kansas City has allowed 2 touchdown passes in a game. And the fact that Purdy's completing less than 65% of his passes in the postseason, and only throwing 1 touchdown pass in each game, and he's facing a better pass defense than he's seen in either of the previous 2 games. I like this under 1.5 passing touchdowns. And if they get in the red zone, they're not going to be trying to throw it to Kittle. They're going to give it to McCaffrey. I mean, they're going to give their best playmaker on the field is McCaffrey. And I'll say this too, just for craps and giggles. I think if San Francisco wins this game, we all know how the quarterbacks win the MVPs. I wouldn't be a bit surprised if McCaffrey would win the MVP because he's the guy that's going to make them go. Debo's still banged up. If he gets dinged on that shoulder the right way, that could really limit him. But McCaffrey, if San Francisco wins, I would be a bit surprised. I think the last running back, don't quote me, but the last running back to get a Super Bowl MVP was Terrell Davis for Denver. That's how long ago that was. So, and then let's switch gears to Patrick Mahomes for just another quick prop bet I like. Under in the interception department, minus 120. That Brock Purdy prop is around 105, 110. But Mahomes has 0 turnover-worthy plays in his last 4 games. He's only thrown 17 interceptions in 17 postseason games. He hasn't thrown any interceptions in his previous 6 games. And honestly, I thought this should be around minus 150. I think there's just some value in the number at minus 120 on that, Griff. And I don't know if he's going to throw it. What do you have? He's not going to throw it near as much in this game if the game goes according to script, as you and I discussed earlier. You're going to see a lot of Isaiah Pacheco, and I'll tell you one thing right now. If Pacheco has 100 yards running the football in this football game, Kansas City will win it. No doubt in my mind whatsoever. But I do like Mahomes on that under in the interceptions department. He's done a really good job of taking care of the football. So there's just a couple for you. I know you've got a couple. I've got one more, but those are just a couple. Everybody wants to do, bet on the stars of the game. So I think those are a couple of good props for the quarterbacks in this one, Griff.
Yeah, I got a couple as well, Tony, and you pretty much tailored it with Pacheco. I have Pacheco on the over rushing yards at 67.5. That line's been jumping from 65 to 67.5. And that is the biggest thing for the Chiefs to get their offense going. For them to win this game, Isaiah Pacheco has to be utilized in the most positive way possible. That offensive line has to stick to the game plan. They have to push the defensive line back, and Pacheco has to make it happen on his feet. The guy has ability. Not only is he explosive, but he's fast as all hell. So Pacheco, if they are able to utilize him in that run game, I think that is the game plan that Andy Reid is going into this matchup with, because, like I said earlier, that opens up the pass game for Patrick Mahomes to really light it up in the air. Go ahead, Tony.
I would say if Pacheco, this is a double-edged sword, and I'll get your feedback on this.
Sure.
I'd say if Pacheco does not have 67 yards, Kansas City might not win.
Agreed.
Oh, okay. Secondly, if he doesn't have 67 yards, but Mahomes has over 50, then Kansas City's back in it to win it. So I think it's a very interesting balance there between Pacheco and Mahomes on rushing yards. But if Kansas City didn't have a combined 100 yards on the ground here, they're going to have trouble winning this game.
Absolutely. That's going to be the biggest play. That's going to be the biggest key opener in this game, Tony. And that's, I don't have a take on Patrick Mahomes rushing yards, but obviously my Pacheco breakdown, that is where I'm at with that. I love that prop. But going into my next one is Brock Purdy. I think Brock Purdy is going to be passing for under 245.5 yards in this game. So that is going to be my next prop play. And the reason being is just like you said, this Kansas City Chiefs defense has been stout. Absolutely outstanding. And you look at their linebackers with Tranquil coming off an 8-tackle game. And then you look at Schneid coming off a 5-tackle game, including a fumble recovery. Then the biggest key opener in this matchup is going to be, you can't let Ayuk get behind you. And I know that that is the approach that this defense with Spagnuolo is going to approach. And this is the way he's going about it. Biggest player in my eyes going into this game on the defensive side is going to be Justin Reed at the safety position. He has to maintain zone defense. He has to stay composed. He cannot let Ayuk get behind him. If any big plays are to happen in the air, it's going to be to Brandon Ayuk. And that is somebody who I know is going to be guarded all game long. Kittle is not somebody who I think is going to have any explosive plays. I think he's going to be more of a check down type of player in this matchup. He's a big body. He's a big target like Kelsey. You can find him anywhere on the map. You've got Ayuk, who is going to be your downfield guy. I don't see that happening. I think the big players are going to stretch in the run game, and that's going to be on the jet sweeps with Debo. That's going to be McCaffrey busting it up the middle, just about anywhere with McCaffrey. So Brock Purdy is going to be my under 245.5 passing yards. That's where I'm at with that one, Tony.
Yeah, and I'll tell you this much right now. Kansas City has limited two of the best quarterbacks in the NFL, in Lamar Jackson and Josh Allen. Now, Allen had a decent day, and they got some big plays downfield towards the end of the game in desperation time, 250 yards passing with Lamar. And Purdy's not near the run threat that Lamar was. Everybody now thinks because Purdy had a couple of big runs against Detroit, he's a running quarterback. He's not. He's a pocket passer, dude. And I would argue that Tua is better than Purdy, and they definitely shut Tua down. And he had Tyreek Hill at wide receiver, for crying out loud. So I agree with both those. One other one that I like here, I like Rashee Rice for Kansas City to go under his 6.5 receptions. His last number in the last game was 6.5, and he got 8. But it took Mahomes 30 completions in that game to get him 8 receptions. I don't see Patrick Mahomes having 30 receptions in this football game.
No.
I think they're going to concentrate much more dink and dunk, getting first downs, killing clock, and running Pacheco. That's what they're going to do, and they're going to dare San Francisco to stop them because San Francisco haven't been able to stop anybody. So we're going to sit. I mean, I don't think, Andy Reid's got to really mastermind this game. Just go with what's been working for you and what's been working against them. And then let the chips fall where they may. And then, you've got a quarterback that can make some big plays. But I definitely go Rice under 6.5 receptions for my last free prop for the Gridiron show. And that's around minus 115 right now, Rick Greff.
Yep. And my last prop coming at you guys right now is going to be, this one is pretty straightforward, simple, and this is a statistical prop play for you. The current line on Patrick Mahomes to pass for over a touchdown and a half is at a minus 140. I think that's ridiculous. I think that line is perfect because I think it's completely underpriced, if I had to say. Patrick Mahomes, for the Chiefs to win this game, Patrick Mahomes has to pass for at least 2 touchdowns in my eyes. Obviously, that, and my biggest belief to back that up goes back to Isaiah Pacheco. It all falls in each other's laps. Pacheco is going to open up the game on his feet. When Pacheco opens up that, who do we find in the end zone? We've got weapons. Kelsey, Rice, all over the map. So for the Chiefs to win this game, I think it's pretty obvious that Patrick Mahomes is going to be airing the ball out in the end zone. I don't think that prop by any means, that line is underpriced. I think it's there. That's a good line, and that's where I'm at with that one, Tony. I like Mahomes over passing 1.5 touchdowns.
I'll say this about the Super Bowl, and we've talked about all the stars in this game. The guys that are going to make the plays and make the difference. But sometimes the guys that make the plays and make the difference, though the usual suspects, so to speak, aren't the ones that score the touchdowns. Mm-hmm. So I would be, if I was you out there listening, watching, betting, enjoying the game, take a look at some of those unlikely suspects to score a touchdown. Noah Gray,
Ross
Watson, a few of these and some secondary players. The juice man, the fullback for I can never pronounce his name. Number 44 for the 49ers, or for Juzeski, or
I got it.
Yeah,
I got you.
But and I think he's going to have more than a reception and a half in this game too. By the way, But look for some of these unlikely players at long odds, for
Yeah.
short money. I mean, 45 to 1 or something for Noah Gray, or even higher than that to score a touchdown. That's worth a $20 bill. That pays for a little surf and turf, down at Barry's at Cirque after the game. So just consider that there's going to be an unlikely hero somewhere.
Yeah.
Watson, maybe, and I could go down the list of secondary receivers for, maybe the 49ers, or the backup running back that's in, what's it, Williams, I think, so look at some of those guys and make some smaller prop bets on the unlikely heroes as well to keep things interesting. And as always, I always bet the safety at 65 to 1. I've only hit it like twice my entire life. One time I had $100 on it, and it was like 75 to 1. And I hit it. So I can always throw a hundy on it just for the long shot.
You got
I have
75 games with losses for it.
Yeah. So nonetheless, folks, of course, it's going to be a couple of weeks for Griff and I to get back to the Hoops Happy Hour show. This week we didn't do it. Obviously, we have media commitments all week long for the NFL. Next week, I'm going to be in Kansas City, traveling to Kansas City with Mrs. George via car to move some things back as we're starting to split time here after March Madness. And the week after that, our producer Jeremy's gone. Of course, Jeremy will be in hiding if Kansas City doesn't win. He's a huge Chiefs fan, so he wouldn't be available anyway for at least 10 or 15 days. And so Griff and I will do a StreamYard podcast on the Twitter channel. Be sure and follow me on Twitter at TGeorgeSports. Griff, your Twitter handle is?
G Murphy wins. At G Murphy wins.
At G Murphy wins. So follow us on Twitter. You're a millennial. You're a Generation Xer. So you do the Instagram, the TikTok crowd. So what's your Instagram?
My Instagram is GBaby, but it's G_BAAY_BEE. And that is the biggest thing. I made a Twitter account literally 2 months ago. My thing has always been Instagram. That is where all my following has been. So yes, I realized I needed to make that transition over to Twitter. So I now have a Twitter, and that Twitter is, as I mentioned earlier, G Murphy wins. So very easy to find, very simple.
I've seen some of his Instagram posts, and he's cashing big tickets at the counter at Caesars. Loving him some basketball, so be sure and get over to DocSports.com. All handicappers will have their cards out Thursday at 5 Central. There'll be a $25 card for their side or total pick, or both. I'll probably put both up there. And then also $25 cards for the prop cards, and all will have multiple props on them. I'm going to have a 10-play prop card with a 7-unit top play. I've lost one prop card the entire NFL postseason. I've hit a 7 and a 6-unit play in the postseason, and I haven't lost a playoff card the entire NFL postseason. Putting 32 years of experience to work for you, folks. And, of course, Griffin, I know you're going to have a couple offerings as well.
Yeah, I'll have five prop plays going out in that game, including a top one, a 6-unit play. So you guys can always obviously check that out on the Docs file. It'll be posted. You could see it right on my page. So I have 5 clean plays, flat top play as well. So it's straight and simple, Tony.
Folks, this is the final Gridiron 6-pack. We went 65%, over 100 game sample size for free for you this year. We'll be back next year, ready to go as again. And of course, we really appreciate you tuning in. We appreciate your comments. Leave them in the comment section. We'll filter out the F-bombs and the links to porn sites and all that stuff. And we'll post any relevant comments you have up there. And of course, you can join Griff and I on Doc Sports Hoops Happy Hour. Upcoming here in about 2 weeks. We'll have a quasi version of that over on my StreamYard, the Vegas Beat podcast, because Jeremy's going on a little vacation here at the end of the month. So that's the week we'll have it on StreamYard. Until then, hey, everybody, enjoy a great Super Bowl. Regardless of who I take, say, go Chiefs, go.
I love it, man. I love it. Thank you guys for obviously having me. Tony, obviously being on the show with you. This has been an absolute blast of a season. Couldn't have had more fun. Everybody that's been engaging on the comments, everything like that, all of the feedback, positive or negative, we appreciate all of it. Thank you, everybody, truly from the bottom of my heart, and I'm sure Tony's as well.
Yep, and we're going to be doing the Super Bowl together, my friend.
Yes, sir.
We're going to be watching the Super. We haven't figured out where yet. We're going to be watching it. So maybe Griffin and I will post a couple of Twitter pics, win, lose, or draw.
Yeah.
For
Sounds
sure.
good, man.
So, yeah, everybody enjoy the game. Thanks for tuning in.